Welcome to Prime Time, a show about and for people in the prime of life. I'm Susan Hoskins, the Executive Director of the Princeton Senior Resource Center. We're a nonprofit organization providing programs and services to older adults, their families, and caregivers in the greater Princeton area. We seek to educate people about current issues and connect you with the resources you need. Visit us at the Suzanne Patterson Building behind Princeton Borough Hall or at Spruce Circle, or visit our website at princetonsenior.org. The contact information will be on at the end of the show. Today I'm pleased to have Dr. Ronald Mannheimer as my guest. Dr. Mannheimer is Executive Director of the North Carolina Center for Creative Retirement, an award-winning lifelong learning, leadership, research, and community service program of the University of North Carolina at Asheville. That's quite a mouthful.
It's long, yes.
Where he also holds an appointment as Research Associate Professor of Philosophy. Before becoming the first director in 1988, Mannheimer was Director of Older Adult Education for the National Council on Aging in Washington, D.C. He holds a Ph.D. in philosophy from the University of California at Santa Cruz, and he's a fellow of the university's Institute on Aging in Chapel Hill. He's published numerous studies investigating philosophical issues of later life and human development, including A Map to the End of Time, Wayfaring with Friends and Philosophers, and The Second Middle Age, Looking Differently at Life Beyond 50. He's active in national aging organizations, a contributor for several magazines, and is a consultant and speaker on the changing nature of retirement throughout the country. He's in Princeton to give a lecture at Princeton Windrose. Thank you for joining me today.
It's my pleasure, Susan.
Can you tell us about your Center for Creative Retirement?
The Center for Creative Retirement started 21 years ago. It's part of the University of North Carolina at Asheville, which is a small public liberal arts institution of about 3,200 students in a town that is a very attractive area for retirees and has been for many years.
AARP identified it as one of the top 10
yeah,
or
one
something.
of the top 10, yeah. Asheville's a city of about 75,000 in a county of about 230,000. That's fairly rural. So the center came about at the initiative of one of our chancellors in the 80s, who was trying to put the campus on the map as one of the 16 campuses of the UNC system. And among the things that he thought was, well, we have a lot of retirees and they're pretty well educated and they're looking for action and want to be useful and helpful, and let's make a program. So, of course, that's how we got our start. I think what makes the center different from most of the lifelong learning institutes, as they're generically known around the country, is that we got a sort of wider charter rather than just having a teaching and learning program. We run leadership programs, we do community service, we do research, we're involved in health and wellness programs, we've been involved in publishing. So I like to think of the center as a kind of comprehensive approach to the second half of life. We put it, we promote thriving in the second half of life.
It sounds like you both had a lot of forethought to have created that in the 80s, because there are centers popping up with pieces of what you do all over the country. And
that's right.
I know that you've done a lot of work with NCOA, and I've been to the conferences, so we see these initiatives coming up, but you were really on the leading edge of that, and now you've added all these other programs. So it sounds like you're also sort of aiming to be one-stop shopping for people to go through that second half of life journey and get involved in the community, and as well as the lifelong learning, because we're all reading that that's one of the key issues for healthy aging, is to be interacting with other people, feeling that there's purpose, learning new material, generating new brain cells, right?
Right, absolutely. Although I don't know that people come in the door exactly expecting that.
Okay.
I mean, those are the benefits that gerontologists tell us about. But when I meet with people, new members and so on, you know, they kind of know the whole use it or lose it, you know, way of thinking, and they are familiar with that. But I think the big driver is that we know that the more education people have, the more they want to have education. And so we are finding increasingly generations of people coming into the retirement age who have an undergraduate degree and see lifelong learning as part of what is going to keep them going and involved. So I'm sure with your center it's very similar in the sense that there's a big social component and a big intellectual component.
Absolutely.
And merged together.
Right. We have a program called Evergreen Forum, which is, I call it senior college, so it's very similar, where we have retired college professors offering classes for retired college students, because there is that quest to keep learning and engaging with other people about what you're learning. And I think that's one of the things that is so important. It's not just the kind of receptive information gathering that you get from watching documentaries on television, but that chance to interact. And are your classes also fairly small, so there's that interactive component or social component where people are meeting other people and of similar interests? And
they're varying sizes depending on what the instructors want. So in our situation, we are a learning community, so that first of all, we have about 1,800 members on an annual basis, and about 400 or 400 to 450 volunteer out of that group. So the courses in our College for Seniors, which span everything from fine arts, foreign languages, international studies, computers, math, just anything you could think of, and fun things too. Knitting, Tai Chi, yoga, meditation, and then we have small group learning where there's no instructors, but most of the people are volunteers.
So your instructors are volunteers?
They're almost all volunteers, and they're not necessarily, and in fact probably fewer than a third would be former teachers. So they're really people who have had other careers and vocations, but in their next chapter of life, they see this as something that they want to do, share what they've learned and things that they're learning that are new as well, and that they can qualify themselves as enough of an expert to at least stay ahead of the class. It's like being a graduate student, as you may remember. It's like you're teaching classes, but you're like 2 weeks ahead of the rest maybe, if you're venturing into areas that you didn't already, study.
And there again, that stimulating the thinking, or finally being able to follow a passion. Like I've always been passionate about Schiller's plays. I want to do a class, and now I have the time and the structure in my life to do that. Some of our instructors are also not former teachers or professors, but I know that one of the things that we try to encourage in our activities and so on is encouraging people to explore things they haven't had a chance to do. People coming back and wanting to connect with volunteer opportunities that give them a chance to do something else. I'm thinking of one of our folks who is working with children in one of the public schools, had always worked in a lab, no people time, and is finding a real calling in this that he didn't even know was there. But
yeah, I think that's so essential. And as I say, our members help run the center along with our staff. So we have a fairly elaborate governance group and set of committees, and they do, they recruit people for teaching, they do the evaluations, they're involved with financial matters. But as I say, we run a lot of different programs, including a leadership Asheville Seniors program that's done every year to acquaint people with what the resources and challenges are of the community, so that they can find the right venture as a volunteer, or maybe starting a business, as an entrepreneur. We've also been running programs for low-income and minority or underserved seniors, both computer literacy, which is taught by our UNCA undergraduates, and a leadership training for older persons program that enables people who don't feel they have the confidence or the skills to advocate for their peers. So we help them do that, and then they'd have like a practicum and get involved right away, and they've done wonderful things. So, I think in our field, it's constantly changing.
Absolutely. Isn't that one of the things that's exciting?
It is.
That's the continued learning for us, too, is that the people who are retiring around us are changing and have different ideas about what they're looking for. Certainly the world around us has changed this year. And
Yeah.
we've had a program we call Engaged Retirement to help people plan for a successful retirement. And we're realizing that with the events of the past few months economically, that we want to build that out so that we can also help people connect with Encore careers. And
Right.
that may be connecting with volunteer opportunities, so we can help people through the volunteer networks connect with volunteer opportunities that can give them the skills that they didn't get in their former career or in a career that they've been laid off from. And going through a job search today is different than it was 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
So there are a lot of new skills there to pick up.
Right.
When do you find people starting to connect with your center? What age? What?
The median age of our members is 64, and so we're moving very heavily into the boomer generation at this point. About 43% of our members are 64 and under, but you know, we still have 15 to 20% who are 75 and above. So we're several generations in our program, and again, the location makes a big difference because a lot of these people have moved to Asheville, you know, related to their retirement. They're freed from where they maybe had to live because of an occupation. Often their own kids, if they've had children, have moved to other locations. So the glue that kept them in place has pretty much dissolved for many of the people. And so we're, you know, an attractive place to move to. And what we found, we did, because we do a lot of research on our members, and last fall we did a survey, and one of the questions was, to what extent was the existence of the Center for Creative Retirement a factor in choosing to move to Asheville? And we found that 27% said that it was very important. So, you know, we're seeing that people are looking for these amenities, which, you know, which includes lifelong learning, because it's a great way to meet people and to learn about the community, as well as to, you know, enjoy learning new things and offering, you know, some of your services. Asheville isn't really a college town like Princeton, but, you know, the University of North Carolina, Asheville is a small, it's only 3,200 students, so it's not exactly a college town.
It's a smaller presence
It
relative
is,
to.
but it has a lot of cultural opportunities, remarkably so for a town of its size. Now, we do run a program called Paths to Creative Retirement that draws people from around the country, and we do that 2 or 3 times a year on our campus, and then we do some versions of it elsewhere. Last April we did a day-long program for the Smithsonian in Washington, and you know, we've done them for other organizations. The people who come to those programs are generally in their mid-50s, and they're still working. They are usually, in some cases, 5 or 10 years away from an actual retirement, or that they're kind of working on one.
When we thought we were going to retire.
Right.
But
Exactly. So, and others are, well, we just had a guy who he had already signed up before he got the golden parachute from GM. I mean, he knew he was going to retire soon. I think he was 59, but it came sooner than he thought. So, and I think the interesting thing about these folks is that about half of them actually already do have a plan of some kind. And so I've said, well, why are you coming to this program? And they say, confirmation. We want to make sure we have not missed something.
Right.
And we want to hear what other people are thinking.
It sounds like your program also does the same kind of thing that our Engaged Retirement program does, which is a lot of people have been to the financial planning lecture.
Right.
And they know that there's a lot more. They know people who have retired either successfully or unsuccessfully, and know that there are a lot of other components to that. And so your program, as does art, help them kind of cover all those bases. And
we really don't focus on the financial aspects because we expect that people have financial advisors where they live, or they have a tax accountant who helps them, or they do it themselves or whatever. And to go for a weekend and to try to get deeply into everybody's individual finances is not very, it's just not very productive. But what we find is that people are trying to figure out, you know, what what should I do, or what do I want to do with the next part of my life? Now, it may involve working, and it may involve the necessity for some kind of income. But I think most people who attend our program are looking for some kind of what some people call the portfolio lifestyle, which is they're looking for balance. They already work way more than anybody should be working, as many of us know. I mean, you know, we have an exercise where they have to designate or identify how much time they spend currently in a variety of activities. Yeah. You see people say, I get up, I go to work, I come home, I watch television, I have dinner, and I go to bed. Yeah. And that's my life. Yeah. And they have enormous responsibilities and all that. And they're saying, this isn't really about retirement. It's right now. I've got to change my life.
Right.
So,
and comparing what does my life look like now, and what do I want it to look like, and where do the adjustments need to happen?
Right. So that struggle or desire to have a more balanced life, to still have some income-producing activity, but to have time for leisure activities and family and travel and taking care of oneself and picking up on lost opportunities and lifelong learning, and maybe playing an instrument or hobbies that an ideal of life. So we see people kind of trying to figure out, how can I do that? And then negotiating that, perhaps with a current employer, because we have people who are looking for phased retirement or looking to work. We have a lot of lawyers who come to our program, and lawyers tend to work forever, or as long as they can. But some of the ones who are I think, smarter are saying, we're finding ways where we can work 4 days a week, and then, I do cross-country bicycling and so on. So that effort. But I think the encore career, too, I know Mark Friedman, I know his work, and we certainly find people who say, I sort of feel like I've done enough of what I've been doing. I'd like to do something more socially redeeming. How can I do that? And we help them, and as you do, look for the resources in the community where they could find out what that might be.
What are some of the things that you think are those key elements of retirement planning? You said, we've talked a little bit about financial planning being one, but both of our programs look at some of the other things that tend to be neglected.
Well,
purpose.
I think it's something about assets, talents, passion that really not all that different from other times in life when people are in career change, or they're not happy with what they're doing, or they're trying to decide on a career. Maybe they're in college and they're majoring in two wildly different things like physics and art or something like that, and trying to think, which way am I going to go on this. It's really trying to extract from your work experiences and training and so on the things that you feel you're good at, that you like, that could be reapplied in other contexts. And a sense of how important is it to make a difference in other people's lives or in the world, and can you do it practically, maybe through volunteerism, but could it also be part of a job? To be quite honest with you, I am retiring in 2 months from my current job after being the director for 21 years.
Wow.
And
big transition.
So a lot of people have said to me, well, you're supposed to be the guru of creative retirement, Ron, so what are you going to do? And I say, do you know the story of the cobbler whose children had no shoes? Because just because you're in the field doesn't mean that you necessarily have it all figured out. Here's what I figured out.
It's always a lot easier to tell other people
so
how to
much
do it
easier.
than
Yeah, we should have a call-in show.
I do caregiver support services, and then go, well, now wait a minute, hold the mirror up.
Right.
And how well are you doing in doing
So
this in
here's
your
what
own
I do. I
life?
have 2 lists. I have a list of kind of extending my career, thinking, okay, I could do consulting around retirement planning, lifelong learning, intergenerational education, a bunch of things that I really like and I know a lot about, and I've done them, so it's more than just theoretical, and I've written articles and all that, and people call me up, to come and do consulting, and I've thought, I love doing that. I think I'd like to continue that, and then I think of other books that I haven't written that I would love to write, classes that I would like to teach in our college for seniors, like I want to teach a class on music in novels, or novels that are very much about musicians and music, and as a philosopher, I'm very interested in philosophers' autobiographies. And then I have another list that's blank. And that's the list I'm working on. Because what I want to also look at is, instead of just saying, you got to keep doing what you've been doing in some form, I'm saying, what if I let go of it? What, in order to see what else is there? What else is there in Ron Mannheimer besides the roles he's had and things that he's done? Is there another opportunity here for a next step?
Well, it sounds like, and that going that direction is thinking outside the box, thinking outside the comfort zone,
Right.
taking risks,
Right.
and saying, if I stop paying attention to this, because you probably do it for 16 hours a day now, if I stop doing that, what would bubble up? What would
Right.
become apparent that I just don't have time to pay attention to?
Right. I wrote an article recently in which I used the phrase, the vortex of nothingness. Now, I know that sounds very ominous, but it was kind of an imaginary journey in which I thought about shedding roles and certain obligations and kind of going through this whirlpool, kind of becoming naked in a way, and then saying, that's kind of scary. It's like free fall, but it's exciting too. And somehow to hang on to both parts of it and hope that, there's something there. But it's not for everyone. I can't exactly run programs and recommend people that they should enter the vortex of nothingness. They don't rush out and say, where can I sign up for that, Ron? That sounds so great. But
one of the things that I hear that's exciting about that is that you're open to that and embracing that. I think that I've seen too many people who, when they even mention the word retirement, and to them it feels like a vortex of nothingness.
Sure.
And so they don't go anywhere near it. And they continue to do what they've always done, even though when you ask them, are you happy? Do you enjoy? Are you finding it rewarding? What are the parts of what you do that you love? There's often not much there except familiarity. Do you?
Habit, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what my talk will be about tomorrow at Princeton Windrose. It's, it's difficult, especially for many people who've been trained and have been successful or, been on a job for many, many years. It's a routine and it's the known, and, and if you have an opportunity to continue that in some other way, that can be very, very attractive, because at least you have some control over it. But if you've been downsized or forced out or whatever, then you have that loss, and it's hard to get momentum again. And so it is challenging. But I mean, I'm the director of the Center for Creative Retirement, so I have to be creative.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what the book is that comes out 5 years down the road. So let me come back to your talk at Windrose. Windrose is a community near Princeton, which is independent living. I believe that most of the residents there are retired. Some are not. Many have a connection with the Princeton community or Princeton University, and they're building up an education series there, much of which is coming from within the community.
Yes.
People giving lectures on things that they're familiar with, and they've asked you to come and talk about this journey, right?
They have, yeah. They have an educational series in which they invite their residents and members of the community. Maybe people who kind of want to check the place out, and this gives them, a nice opportunity to come over, hear a presentation, look around, no commitments, no obligation, and just to get familiar, meet some of the people who live there. Right. It's a beautiful facility, and this is my first time. And I'm going to be talking about some of the key principles for, in a sense, how to stay or become or engage creatively in the second half of life. And by creative, I don't mean being an artist or anything like that. One of the approaches and metaphors that I use is taken from architecture, and it's the notion of adaptive reuse, just like this building itself, which is, finding buildings that have a lot of character, have a sense of history, but they're no longer used for the purpose for which they were created. It's like downtown loft space that, now are condos and fire stations that are turned into pubs and libraries and so on. And it's
understanding again that just like our human lives, they're not static.
They're
and
not
set,
static.
That there's a constant evolution.
And we appreciate the beauty of them and the integrity, and we want, and like ourselves, we find new uses.
Yeah.
for those and new ways to be engaged, but not throwing away the past,
Right.
but
Sounds very
enhancing it.
interesting. In these last couple of minutes, I wonder if you can talk any about observations that you're making in these more challenging economic times with the folks that you serve, that you work with. What?
Well, I don't think it's any surprise that with the losses that people have incurred in the financial markets and in their 401ks and the uncertainties about healthcare costs, that people are, although it's hard to get accurate data on this so quickly. I mean, what we know is the retirement.
We have a lot of anecdotal data.
We have a lot. And I was looking at a study that was just done by the MetLife Foundation, where they went back to people they had interviewed in 2007 who were planning to retire at the age of 62 and 63, and there was a big drop in what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And so clearly, if people have the option, they're putting in a few more years. The boomer generation, as you know from all the research, at least the vast majority claim they were going to work well beyond the age of their parents' generation. The data that we have on that is that it's not really happening. It hadn't been, in a much smaller proportion than one would have thought. Yes, there is an upswing in delaying retirement, but not as dramatically as that. If you ask people questions when they're 50 or 55 what they're going to do, it's not necessarily what they do. So, but very clearly, people are seeking ways to keep an income and to have security a longer time, especially knowing also that they're probably going to live longer.
One of the things that I want to do as we wrap up, too, is to encourage people towards what you were talking about before, of that right balance in life, and that it's not an on-off switch, that you're working here and you're retiring here, but the kinds of things like lifelong learning. There's so many opportunities, volunteering, there's so many opportunities to engage in that at the same time that you're continuing to work in order to have that income. And it sounds like those are the kinds of opportunities that people find at your center as well.
Yes, that's exactly right.
So thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It's exciting. It's always fun to talk to someone else who's working in the field and involved in the creative process of thinking ahead. What are folks going to be needing in the coming months and years? So
maybe we should look for some collaboration between our two centers. That would be great.
Thank you very much.